Well, hello everyone, and happy 2019. This is going to be an exciting year of LP history, and we're coming up on the 50th anniversary of the party. December, we read last month, we read LP News #1. And what I'm going to be presenting to you today is a bit of a supplement to that information. And over the next few days, I'll be recording the next, item, which will be LP News #2. Since I had the serendipity of actually starting the series on the month that corresponded to the newsletter, blessed be the chicken on a stick who guideth me in all of my ways. I will try to follow that month thing. So we'll go back, obviously, in time, but it'll be January, February, that sort of thing. So January 1972 will be our subject to examine in the coming weeks. But for a supplement now to the first one, where it was talking about organizing a committee to form a Libertarian Party. But before David and friends got to that point, they had to ask themselves, why a Libertarian political party? Is that a yay or a nay?
I object to being insulted from that podium. I am no Kool-Aid drinker.
At that time, it was a very exciting period of political change. One which a few years ago I would have said is nearly incomprehensible to us today. This was the era of the sexual revolution, breaking free of rank racial discrimination and the proliferation of women's rights. American libertarianism burst into its own amidst all of this. And I use the preface American before libertarianism for a specific reason. Not all things under the name libertarianism are the same, or even remotely compatible. Europe had a long-standing tradition of libertarianism, which is distinctly different, with collectivist underpinnings, rather than the radical individualism, which is the foundation for American libertarianism. It often can be seen in how someone views equality. Is equality of opportunity, or is it equality of outcome, or at least equality of minimum outcomes? For American libertarians, it was always the freedom to try, and that alone. And for some odd reason here, I feel like weirdly tempted to do an ASMR version of John Galt's speech. But like a good capitalist, send me some Patreon love if you would like to hear that. Or if you would rather not hear that, send me some Patreon love. Let the market decide. So why was the Libertarian Party conceived, and what was its intended purposes? You often hear today that I need to put on my pretentious something or other. The only purpose of a political party is to elect candidates. And I wonder who made such people the ultimate arbiter of such things. Is politics merely electing candidates, or is it bigger than that? Is it dealing with the entire framework of how men live together in society? To me, to say that electing candidates is the only purpose is akin to saying that the only purpose to eating is to poop.
Because poop is funny.
Well, that certainly will be a happy end result, I'm talking about the pooping after you eat, because, constipation's not cool. A lot of other interesting things happen along the way, such as growing your body with the nutrition you get from that food. If man is at heart a political animal, as Aristotle said, and I believe he is, then politics is so much more than that. We do not need to guess, however, why the Libertarian Party was formed. For its principal founder, David Nolan, was not shy about telling people precisely why he was pursuing this direction. And the too long did not read is that it was not to solely elect candidates. In fact, at least at the beginning, winning individual elections was an afterthought. So here is what David Nolan had to say about this baby he was about to birth. And if you hear all kinds of racket coming from upstairs, I have parrots, and they decided this is the perfect time to raise hell with all of their toys. And of course, scream intermittently. David recognized that American libertarian thought was coming into its own, but it was failing to make any impact on larger society. And part of the reason for that, he believed, was that activists were not, for the most part, engaging the enemy wholesale and visibly. Well, he acknowledged that there are many activist routes to liberty and that they are all fruitful. The political sphere is one where it cannot be ignored, or if it is ignored, it's ignored to our peril. Because while we may dream for the shining city on a hill, or melodies of sweet Rothbard waft through the night, that is not the world we presently have. And if wishes were fishes, we'd all cast nets. Recognizing this, however, we must face a hard reality. And even if we threw everything we had against the political powers, this present system is designed to exclude all but the safe, the boring duopoly voices. We like to think with American pride that we have stumbled upon the best of all electoral systems, or at least of the currently existing ones. But that is far from self-evident. As Nolan saw it, a two-party system was just a one step away from a one-party tyranny. And we are not the only ones who see, or at least intuit, this reality, though we often try to pretend it's not there. Most voters do as well. We hear all the time that a third party cannot win. And contrary to popular opinion, it is not only because the national secretary has pink hair. But this is not entirely true, or it's not the entire story. There are chinks in this wall, particularly at the lower levels, for one thing. But more importantly is that we do not have to buy that definition of winning. We could have all been winners in 2016. We just needed to get behind Trump. Yeah, that's wonderful, right? We won, right? Make the Libertarian Party great again. No. And then that demonstrates my point. There is more to winning than winning a race. And that is all the two existing parties want. So even strategizing a takeover is unlikely. They have too much to lose. And the world is changed by men who have nothing to lose. So in what ways can we win now and in the immediate future, as seen by Nolan? And I think, unfortunately, if we did not tear ourselves apart in this ridiculous internal battle of winning elections now, that we actually would be winning elections now, that the groundwork, the seeds would have been sown. But we've had two minds for too many years. So what were Nolan's reasons? He gave a numbered list. Number one, politics brings automatic news coverage in a way that other activist activities do not produce. And merely slapping politics on something can generate a great deal of attention. And you reap thousands of dollars of exposure, of free exposure, which can inure to the benefit of the cause, which is why if you ran for office, you are contributing far more to the party than just whatever money or effort that you invested into your race. Number two, this coverage will allow us to economically reach and kindle the libertarian fire in the belly of people who are truly libertarian and do not know it yet. Number three, it will give us an idea of how much hardcore support we really do have. Number four, a political party is an enduring, permanent hub and focal point for libertarian activism in a way that one-off issues or limited movements are not. Number five, it will allow us to join the libertarian left and the libertarian right. And to be clear, Nolan meant something specifically by these. For the libertarian left, he was speaking of social liberals, not economic progressives. And for the libertarian right, he was speaking of economic conservatives and not social conservatives. And when I say that, obviously you can be socially conservative and be a libertarian, but we're talking about as far as the direction of the government, that you want the government to impose these kinds of frameworks. So as politics and not as preferences. And I can't word this any better than Nolan did himself. He had said that a libertarian party, by its mere existence, would put some pressure on the other parties to take a more libertarian stand, to move that Overton window, in other words. Nolan ended this essay with an aside, oh, and we might actually get some libertarians elected.
As I see it, the Libertarian Party has gone far astray from its original mission. Somewhere along the way, our commitment to being the party of principle was replaced by a shallow, opportunistic goal of winning elections now, any election, anywhere. Principles be damned, according to the proponents of this vision. We should back off from scary positions, tone down our rhetoric, find out what voters want, and tailor our message to what they want to hear. The nadir of this mindset was reached in a Monday message dated March 9th, 2009. It carried the heading, "The most important principle is winning." I would be hard put to come up with a statement more antithetical to our beliefs and purpose. Just for starters, winning is not a principle at all. It might be a goal or a strategy for achieving our goals, but it's not a principle. And if it were, it's not our principle. This is pure opportunistic rubbish, exactly what you'd expect from a Republican or Democratic Party hack. No, the most important principle for libertarians is the principle of self-ownership, as set forth in the preamble to our platform and our statement of principles. These are the standards by which every policy statement and every campaign must be judged. And anyone who is uncomfortable with this yardstick probably ought to be in another party, one where the most important principle is winning. My fellow libertarians, our party is at a crossroads. Either we stand up boldly for liberty or we lose all relevance. The voters who want real, meaningful, substantive change will direct their energies elsewhere, while opportunists who seek short-term electoral victories will support the Republican and Democratic politicians who offer a far better chance of winning now. Yours in liberty, David F. Nolan, founder of the Libertarian Party, July 17th, 2009.
Our heritage is a multi-pronged approach, not a reductionist win elections now at any cost approach, and I will never cede that ground. Now, was everyone at that time thrilled about this idea of a libertarian political party? Of course not, because we're talking about libertarians and we are the Eeyores of politics. We are only happy when it rains. In response to Nolan's The Case for a Libertarian Political Party, Erwin Strauss put out the case against a libertarian political party. Of course he did. And this is somewhat difficult to find, but I did get my paws on a copy right here, and I read it eagerly. And a stark difference, excuse me, that would mean get some lubrication. A stark difference between these two works is that Nolan conceded the value of all the diverse efforts. Strauss, on the other hand, scoffs at the political effort, and he sees activist time and money as a scarce resource that would be drained into non-productive use. Of course, however, that's only superficially correct, if he is right. It is a shallow analysis of motivations that assumes, but for option X, there would be the exact same resources poured into options X and Z instead. And additionally, my time and resources are mine to waste if I wish. If I want to take a dump upon a Scrooge McDuck pile of money and then set it on fire, that is my business. No one is entitled to it. He actually goes into calculating literal value, like in dollars, of voting to conclude it is a bad investment. But upon whose values? The lone student standing in front of a tank in Tiananmen Square might have seemed like a pretty bad investment at the time, but the only person who can gauge if it is worth it, if that is how they wish to expend their life, is the owner of that life. Perhaps picking up the one starfish is indeed worth it. So, basically he spends a good deal of time, pointing at a circle and saying, see, I proved it is round. If you believe that political activity is inherently useless, of course, political activity then is useless. Wherever you go, there you are. He delved into a little bit on how you can avoid coercion and that sort of thing, but not really one of the best treatments of it. But what I loved about this book is this guy's got an acerbic wit. He, and it's particularly if you're able to laugh at yourselves, because he talks about his experiences at a few libertarian conventions where, he basically trolled us. And it was, it was to me, it was funny. I like reading things like that. I like reading people with the sharp tongues, right? So I did right again, didn't I? So in that sense, I enjoyed this little pamphlet, but it was not quite as robust as I hoped it would be. Alrighty, I hope you enjoyed this little explanation, that it gave you some grounding upon where we came from and the reasons for our existence. Until we chat again, you have an awesome day.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.